pretty soon when he gets here. But it won't be
So
right.
we'll need to change the video.
You know,
Like what?
did you ever make Marvin a meeting?
No, because we haven't had access to that thing.
Video.
The sand,
Select
for the traps, you know, the sand traps.
There we go.
Yay!
Give me all that information,
Wonderful.
because I wanted to go back.
What is it? What are we seeing?
That camera, you're on it. So Nelson, the camera, we have a different camera that's pointing to the roof. Can you hear me? No. I can't hear you either.
You're still muted, I think.
No, I'm not.
Up here to the HD Pro.
I'll have to send it back. Now can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can.
Yes, I can.
We have an external microphone and camera pointing at the roof.
Nelson,
Yes,
how does this sound? Can you hear me? Okay.
yes, I can. Yes.
Okay. Well, what about when I get?
Can you hear me?
What about over here?
I can hear it from over there too.
Can't hear you.
You can hear me.
Okay. Okay.
I'll have to call you later. I need to talk to you about. Oops.
They didn't want to talk to you.
I need to talk to you about what we did with Corey Spears and all that. We have to fix it. We didn't do it correctly. It was my fault.
Look at here, Arch is here. That's wonderful. What's our time? Okay. All new.
Just do it now and we'll have to mail it. Happy dollars. I didn't get my pen back. Thank you. Can I have that little sheet that I gave you? I was gonna make copies, but I didn't. And that way I'll know who has to go.
I think so.
You know.
So we'll have to get it going here in a second.
Are you saying, Kevin Jackson is here now? Oh.
When we decide to do it.
They don't have a job.
So we're back to the.
Hey, Robin, can you hear me? If somebody wants to go to the meeting, I guess she'll go Zoom.
How you doing? These prayer today?
Okay. Yeah,
I'll
I'll be out of order.
That was a good picture. Let's go ahead and, we look like we only have Nelson in the Zoom.
And the dang in a long time.
Hello, everyone. Wow, this is awesome. And I guess, I think it'd be kind of hard to project with this on, maybe, so I'll take it off while up here. But welcome to our first in-person and Zoom meeting. Our only Zoomie is Nelson, who's out of town. Looks like all the rest who normally are on there are here, so that's excellent. Thank you.
So, do I need to tell Nelson who's here or just move the camera around so
I
he can
guess-
take the role?
Oh, so he can take the role. Yeah, we
I
can.
didn't get out of role.
Yeah, so there, Nelson, you can see who's over there. Okay, and then we'll turn it to this
He's
group.
not that fast.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
I'll
I
send you a
can
list.
watch the Zoom later and do attendance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how, I'll make a list and I'll send it to you.
So let's go ahead and start with our prayer and pledge allegiance. Marvin?
Bow our heads. Dear God, thank you for Rotary. Thank you for the ability to meet in person today and to get back to a little bit, a slice of normal. Lord, give us wisdom to make good decisions as a Rotary Club and to be good corporate citizens in our community. Thank you for all those that are here today and bless all those that aren't as well. In your Lord's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
One,
under God, indivisible, with
indivisible.
liberty and justice for all. Sing this time.
We worked, that worked, didn't it? Let me turn this around, so. All right. Yes, there we go. So, our normal process is to pause and go ahead and eat. But in talking to our presenter today, he has a wonderful program that's going to be a little long, not long. He needs time, let's put it that way. So if you don't mind, I encourage you to go ahead and eat, but while you're eating, we'll go ahead and start with some of our business. We have a few business items that we need to take care of. And also talk about how we want to move forward. First of all, is we're going to have normally the first meeting of the month, we have our assembly meeting. Because this is our first one back and Alex had planned on doing his presentation, we have moved that to next week. So we're going to have our assembly next week. And I believe we're doing our board meeting prior to that. Is that correct, Robin?
Mm-hmm.
And so that will start at
11.
So any and all are welcome to join for the board meeting at 11, and then we'll break into this. So, you know, the other odd thing about the meeting here is that, you know, when we're doing Zoom, we were starting at 12 o'clock with Zoom, and then 12:15, breaking into our regular meeting, kind of like this. But that 12 to 12:15 period is when we were able to do our visitation and our mingling and talking to our friends. Well, you know, if we have a lot of people on Zoom right now, today it's just Nelson, you know, that we're not able to do that, if you will, or they cannot participate in that, let's put it that way. Do you still want to do the 12 o'clock, 12:15 start like we're doing now? Does that seem reasonable to everybody? And still get here at 12 and do our mingling, and we'll try and include the Zoom folks, but we'll keep that same schedule, at least try it for a while. Anything else about this hybrid meeting? Any other changes or thoughts? Okay, well, again, it's an experiment. Nothing is set in stone. If you think there's some changes that we could make that would be beneficial. We're still low on our attendance, unfortunately, so we want to, and we'll get the word back out to all the attendees, all the members. I encourage them to start joining us again. Also, in regard to that, in regard to the mask, obviously you can't eat with the mask on. And we're asking, you know, 3 to a table and having a little bit of distance there. But you don't have to move. You don't. Yeah, I know. We're shaming for adding too many. But I think everybody's in agreement that once you stop eating, it's best to put this back on, and you know, for everybody's safety and your own. So that's the housekeeping items. Any happy dollars? Excuse me. Let's go to other announcements for the club. Yes, ma'am.
Talk about the barbecue practice for I now have 3 groups. We had 1,
Yeah.
2, now we have 3.
Awesome.
Music groups. So I need 2 more. So I'm still scraping.
Yeah.
We've got Richard Ritter and Jody Lovelace and Pierce Danger. The cool thing about Pierce Danger is, of course, they're not bluegrass, as you can tell by the name. But his wife is Mindy Thomas, who has one of the beauty shops that we helped. So they were more than happy to.
Wonderful.
So that was probably more rock and roll. They can play lots of stuff, but not bluegrass. Okay, works for me. And they're 7 to 9, so they want to finish up there. So anyway, that was pretty cool. I also need to know if anybody wants to go to the high school next Tuesday at 6 o'clock to give the scholarships to the students. Don't know if anybody's going. Grant said it's just a hit and miss. Grant will give the scholarship to the people and let it go. I think that's fine with me. I don't know how anybody else feels. So, if anybody wants to, let me know. If not, I will bring back and tell them that, you know, to do this. I also have, if you see Grant, I've also asked him to sing. Oh, I know, but he says, I don't know if I can do that. I said, what's in October? Think about it. He's an only man. So if anybody sees him, encourage him to sing that. His brother, yeah. And so that would be, I think, that would be one. We only have 1 spot.
Okay.
Anyway, that's all I have. But I wanted to be, show everybody that.
Wonderful. Thank you. We'll try and find those other 2.
Yes.
Keep our ears open.
Yes.
All right. Any other announcements? Yes, sir.
Just a quick thing about the Y. The Amy Wellness Trust is developing a brochure for us to use in our fundraising. Again, we hear that they've almost, or may have $3 million already. And so this will be something that we can take around to fundraise, but they're gonna send one. In fact, Starling was supposed to
No,
be here.
I've got it here already. She dropped it off. Yeah,
And that's what we're supposed to look at and see if there are any improvements to that we can make, but that'll be what we pass around. But we can't do it until the festival.
right.
That's our breakout news event about the fundraising for the YMCA.
Well, and I told her that because of programs and the timing on this, that we would talk about, work on this at the assembly meeting next week.
Yeah, and that would be good for the board to review that first. And so that's good. I didn't know you had it.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Very good. Anything else on that? So, Happy Dollars? Yes, ma'am.
I want to get some big bucks because I have not been contributing myself as well as my money. And so I am just happy to be back. Thank you for meeting this way. I listen to the Zoom sometime. I'm a worker. I can listen to you, but you didn't know I was there. So shame on you for the dirty jokes that I didn't hear. Anyway, I'm just happy to be here. And I'm gonna put up vote for Rotary. While I'm doing my happy news, I'll just make my formal announcement. As you may or may not know, Bryce has been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and Lewy body. And since January 28th, he has been at Autumn Care in Marion. I'm working on, I can see him once a week for 30 minutes by appointment. Hopefully that's going to change. And I'm working on getting him into the Veterans Home in Black Mountain, which is my son lives in Black Mountain. And so that's what we have to happen. Doing that, I've had to do a lot of creative financial work. Let me just tell all you guys, make sure your wife knows all about your finances because I knew nothing. When you find bonds for your grandchildren, a Walmart bag in the closet, that is not good. Thank God for family. I mean that literally, thank God. Anyway, so that has occupied a lot of my time. However, when I found an attorney who was working with me, and the first thing she said is, you need a brokerage. Who is your broker? I said, oh, I don't know. Bing Crosby, Rotary. Yeah. And then they say to me, you need a CPA. I'm like, oh. CPA, Dave Wally, huh? Yeah. Rotary. So I will tell you, I am so indebted to this lovely lady here who invited me to join Rotary 10 years ago. And because I will tell you, it has really been, you haven't seen me, but I have been touting the wonderful things that Rotary does. So it's personally, I mean, I know you do a lot of things with the community, but also for each and every member. And I just thank you. And so I'm so happy to be here.
You're so right. How did you let that happen?
Because he was the maiden. You know, he's
That's an old school concept.
well, honey, I'm old school. I mean, you have to.
And what Elaine needs to do or the club needs to do is to go to Bing and go to Dave and say, you had a client there looking for help and you weren't there.
I need
You can say your comments with our colleagues.
I'm doing fine. I'm really doing really okay. Everything, I've just been blessed with a lot of support. And I just know that whatever happens, we know that it's in control.
Yeah.
And I'm okay. Whatever happens, I'm in control. I mean, I'm not in control, but I will be okay. Thank you.
Any other happy dollars? Okay, Danny?
I think it's the same sentiment that everybody's, gonna feel today. It's just, we're so glad to be back. And I ran into Bob yesterday at the deli. And I said, oh, it's good to see you in person. And I genuinely meant that. It was just good to see friends in person. And I can't tell you how happy I am to see you all today. And Glenn was was gonna come, but he had to be on a conference call because it lasted a long time. But, anyway, I'm just glad to be here. I'm glad to see everybody here is safe. And, welcome back, all of us.
Yes.
Thank you, Jamie. Marvin?
Thanks for vaccination, because we got to go, Dad and I, on a little trip to one of your favorite states, Georgia, to a place called Cumberland Island, right here in Florida, and got to explore that a little bit last week. So glad to have a little time.
Good, and the weather was probably pretty good. Anybody else? Any more happy dogs? Robin?
You gotta talk now, quick.
I'm glad we're back. And I don't have to keep my thousands of pieces of paper about everybody's money.
Good, good.
And I'm just
Chuck?
happy. I'm just very
Another
happy that we're all back together.
Thank you, Chuck.
Absolutely, yes.
I've got, I see, $5 here. Happy to be back.
Good.
Good over what Jamie was saying about seeing everybody, but I also want to welcome Marvin. When he said, hey, I know you, and I thought, I don't know anybody with Phil. And we both at the same church up in Little Switzerland, so welcome, Marvin.
Yeah, we're glad to see you in person.
Thank you.
Yes.
Welcome, Marvin too. That's Marvin too. Any other happy dollars? Okay, we're glad, Mr. President.
All right, all right. And then we have a couple of awards here. Bill, if you would join us, please. We want to come on.
Yeah. I think that's what the other Bill's doing.
You didn't do anything, did you?
So this is our Paul Harris, you weren't there at the original presentation. So this is the Paul Harris Fellows Award presentation of your 10+2. So, there you go. Thank you very much. And Dr. Woodard? You have the same one, except +3. So this is your third one. I guess the fourth one, because it's that one +3. Hang around long enough. Yes. Thank you. All right, anything else before we break into our presentation? I'm sorry, the wheel, yes. We're totally forgetting things. Let's do the wheel.
I have one. If we have several people who have not done their Rotary Foundation contribution for the year, and we have been every member every year for a long time. So if you want to know if you've paid yours, it was with your July dues bill. Let me know. Or if you pay directly on the website and haven't told me, let me know. But there's 10 people that haven't done that, and we don't want to lose our streak.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
I will,
Not in
we'll be reaching
public
out to
here.
them. We'll be reaching out to you if you are. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send you an email.
Yeah.
Number 59.
You
What
have.
number? 59.
Oh, I didn't get that. I forgot to get it.
71. 71. Third time, third lifetime. 53. Okay, no winner.
Yeah. Well, don't you, if you already had some numbers, wouldn't you be able to use those numbers?
No, I'm not keeping track of that anymore.
Oh, okay.
You had to put your money in the basket now.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't do that. So, but so next time, even though we had on the Zoom, you could, Nelson's
Yeah,
saying.
you have a permanent number.
He's got his thumb down.
I'll give you all the paperwork.
All right. Anything else? Well, I think, yes, sir. Oh, nobody got it. Yes, sir. He wrote 3 times.
Okay. Jamie.
Yeah, he's going. So I think our presenter today doesn't need any introduction. And the subject, I think, is going to be very interesting to us all. So I think think most of us are very interested in. And so I'll turn it over to Mr. Glover now.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. This is a brand new program. What inspired this was the earthquake in Sparta. How many of you felt that earthquake? Okay, several people felt it. We're gonna talk about that and a little bit about earthquakes on the East Coast, and especially in North Carolina, and how they happen, what makes them happen, and how frequent they are. So we'll get started, but I named this one Shake, Rattle, and Roll. Who's ever heard that song? By Bill Haley and his Collins. How many of us older than that? What year was that? 56? I think it was about out of bowl. So that was, I think you're right. Okay, but we're gonna talk about North Carolina earthquakes, especially one that happened right here, not too far from us. I felt it in my house. We're gonna start with this concept and what makes these work. How do they work? What generates them? What generates the power? Power is generated right here. The core of the earth is actually a center molten, somewhat molten core with a more molten core on the outside, but this is generated by nuclear fusion. There's actually a nuclear reactor here that generates the heat that keeps our earth. It sustains us and keeps everything moving. That's also what makes the magnetic poles for the earth. As the liquid moves around the core, that acts as a dynamo and actually sets up a current. So that's what makes our system work. This is, in doing that, it heats the mantle. This is the mantle and the crust, and it forms a convection. So it's that convection that moves continental plates. That's what the generator is for continental drift and seafloor spreading. But as this comes up, it generates a conveyor, and these continents, this part of the crust moves this way, this part moves this way. This is a subduction zone, but this is what generates the movement of the continents, and it's the movement, the moving and stretching and crunching and bending and grinding of the continents that causes an earthquake. And they form in certain areas, and these are continental. This is what happens within the earth. This is a hot spot. This is what Hawaii is. This is what Yellowstone is. Actually a conduit to the core through the mantle. This is a divergent plate boundary. This is where this happens in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, where this material comes up and pushes plate to the side. That happens all through the Atlantic Ocean, all the way from north to south. And then you have subduction zones, which is this. This is what formed the material to be generated here for the spruce pine pegmatites. And this is a transform fault. A lot of these are in California. The transform fault is where the movement is sideways. So you have sideways movement. And other faults are either a normal fault or a reverse fault. That's a normal fault, and that's a reverse fault. So all of those we have in different places. This is another concept design. This is the mantle. This is rising magma that comes up for a hot spot here. That's the generation of Hawaiian islands. This is a subduction volcano is here. This is what happened early, about 380 million years ago here on the ancestral eastern margin of the American coast, North Carolina coast, where you had a subduction zone where the seafloor was being drafted down. It's this friction here that generated the heat that caused the volcanic arc here. And this is where the spruce pine pegmatites were formed in this area. All evidence of the volcanoes that were here then are gone. All of that's been wiped out and eroded. And of course, there's a transform fault where they move sideways. And rift volcanoes. A rift is like the African Valley, and a rift is where you have a land formed like this. And when the earth pulls apart, you get a downdraft, and that's called a drop. Everybody see that? So the pieces actually drop down, and that's the African Red Valley. That's why it's all so flat and a plain, because that's a huge area where the crust drops down. And of course, here's our state. This is the coastal plain here. Piedmont is right here. This is the eastern Blue Ridge. And this is the western Blue Ridge. And this is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Here's Africa, South America, North America, Europe. This is the split of the ocean, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. This is contained entirely in the ocean except for one little country right there. Who is that, Martin? It's Iceland. Iceland is the only continental terrain that is split by the earth crust. And we'll show a little bit more about that. That's on my bucket list to go. These are the about 15 continental plates in the world. You can see our country here. Here's the U.S. But this is the movement of the plate. So you've got the Eurasian plate, which is in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, is pushing this way. It's all of this force that's pushing this way to the border of California at the edge of the Huanfuca plate, where a lot of action takes here. Of course, that's earthquakes and volcanoes in California, but there's not much along here, but it is the generated pressure from this pushing this way, because that's the Mid-Atlantic, this is the Mid-Atlantic Ridge down here, and that's where the continents, the plates are, the world is splitting, and that still goes on every day. But this is the generator of what happens somewhat to us in the middle. That happens, the speed of earth movement, plate tectonics, is the speed of your fingernail growth. So I use this as a little demo. I masked my fingernail with a hammer, and the whole thing was black, and it eventually grew out. This took 6 months. So this demonstration is to show you that a continental plate will move about that long, about 2 or 3 centimeters in 6 months. So they're moving, and over millions and millions of years, that amounts to a lot of area. But that's what's pushing. In general, all continental plates move at about that speed. Anybody feel it moving now? It's moving, but it's really slow. This is a concept of the ocean floor of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge here. These are all transformed faults, but this is splitting. It's pushing this way, and it's pushing this way, and it runs right through this little country, right through the middle. So there are lots of things that happen in Iceland, especially because of that divergent continental margin. This is a Maggi in Iceland. This is 230 feet of separation. This happened over 10,000 years. But the continental Mid-Atlantic Ridge runs right down this path. Anybody ever been there? Usually I think somebody's been there. Did you walk this path, Mark? Did you realize the impact of what you were walking through? Usually there are little signs and things about that, but this is huge. This is the Eurasian plate, and this is the North American plate. So this is what's pushing, and there's all kinds of volcanic activity right under this little path. It's not anything projected to explode. It's just moving these two walls apart. And realize these walls were once joined and were separated and broken apart. And yes,
Those two boundaries, are they still growing?
yes, oh yeah, all of this is still growing. All of this is still separated. We're becoming further and further from Europe and Africa every day. Every day. At some point, it will stop and they will join. But you won't be around. These are earthquakes in the eastern U.S. These are documented earthquakes. This was the Amelia earthquake in Virginia. We'll talk a little bit about that. But we do have them, but they're mostly small. But there have been some significant ones. This is the earthquake from the Amelia episode in central Virginia, August 23rd, 2011. Every green dot on here is where it was felt. So it was felt quite a ways, and some of you know that that's the one that cracked the Washington Monument. It did damage to the Washington Monument. This is an area near Richmond, and it's kind of between Richmond and Washington D.C., but look how far it was felt. And this was a large earthquake. This is a typical California earthquake. These rocks are not as dense as these rocks, or compact as these rocks, so these aren't felt as far as these are.
On the scale, what was it?
This was a 5.8. This is Mercalli scale, which is, it equates to the Richter scale. I'll show you the comparison. And this is a 6 Richter scale earthquake. This was a 5.8. So look at the difference. So an eastern earthquake is felt more than a California earthquake. Y'all know that? Because of the rocks. On August 23rd, 2011, tens of millions of people along the East Coast suddenly felt the earth shaking from the largest earthquake in the eastern U.S. since the M58 earthquake in 1944 near Cornwall and Messina, New York. The total economic loss from the earthquake were about 200 to 300 million, which included millions of dollars in damage to the National Cathedral, the Armed Forces Retirement Home, and the Washington Monument in Washington, as well as minor to major damage to almost 600 residents' properties. These are some of the damages from those. Both scientific numerical modeling and the aftershock locations define a 10-kilometer long fault, about 6 miles, rupture plane trending north 28. That's from north 28. So it was a northeast southwest fault trend, and included 50 to an incline, so it tilted about 50 degrees southeast. The new fault zone has been named the 12 fault zone. So these things become new faults. No evidence of surface rupture has been found with this earthquake, but there were small sand balls identified near the epicenter caused by strong shaking, as well as rock falls up to 245 kilometers away. This reveals the extraordinary distance that damaging ground shaking can extend in eastern North America, about 10 times further than damage felt by shaking extended in western North America. This discrepancy is due to the older and denser rocks of the Earth's crust on the east coast that seismic waves can travel through more efficiently without losing energy. So it's the rock type that transfers that seismic energy. This again is our state, North Carolina and Virginia combined. The earthquake was about right here in Piedmont. This is the coastal plain again in Piedmont, the Blue Ridge. This is the Valley Ridge and the Cumberland Plateau. These are all different rock types. And these are cutaway diagrams of that. We live in the Blue Ridge, but lots of faulting here, lots of faulting in the Piedmont, the Blue Ridge, and the Cumberland Plateau, or the Valley Ridge. Not much in the Cumberland Plateau, which is to the west. Most of this is in Tennessee and Alabama. And this is a cutaway of the crust. This is the continental crust, actual crust. These are 1.1 to 1.6 billion year old rocks. There are rocks like that in Bakersfield, in north of Bakersfield, because this broke loose and thrust it up to the top. Here's actual. These are all crenulations of folding and faulting, and these are major faults here. All of these are major faults, and all of these sit right under us. But here's the Brevard Fault. This is the largest one. Runs through Marion. When you come up 226, 221, and you start coming up the mountain, that's the base of the Brevard Fault. That was the fault that trussed the Blue Ridge up. All of these layers, these are rock layers, were even, but what happened was it broke loose, and this area, these older rocks, were over here, broke loose and thrust it up and over younger rocks. So that's an overthrust belt. That's what happened before in the mountains where we live. And these are other geologic maps. This one's by Mershon Hatcher. good friends of mine. And these are geologic maps. All of these are faults. And we are, here's the, let me get a little closer where I can see. This is Bakersville. This is spruce pine. These are the spruce pine pegmatites, all of these things, but it's faulted all over. The Linville Falls fault, the Table Rock fault, Blowing Rock fault, and there's Blowing Rock, but all of this is just faulted to pieces. And that's as all the pushing from those tectonic plates broke loose and pushed over each other, rammed into each other, and those faults are not active, but they're sutures. So those sutures are still remaining. It's just as if this was a suture, this was a fault. Those aren't really active because the tectonic mechanism's not there anymore, but there's a suture there. Those rocks are broken. What we get are little faults where that just moves just a little bit. It's not anything that's going to do this. It's really just a little bump. And most of what we get are failed rifts. A failed rift, and these are especially true around Grandfather Mountain. This is a rift where the crust, as we talked about earlier, trying to separate. But it never separated totally. It formed a rift basin like this and stopped. The mechanism stopped. But that suture is still there. Most of the earthquakes we get here, the little ones, are from a failed rift zone. So it's these little sutures that are breaking out and moving. Let's get this. Okay. And this again, these are, and this is the Grandfather Mountain window here. This is Marion. This is the big bowl you see at Marion. These are older rocks around the top, younger rocks on the bottom. In fact, the younger rocks are where Baxter gets its water for IV-Bax. That water is a carbonate water, which is very, very pure. And the quarry there at Woodlawn is a limestone quarry. There's not hardly any other limestone in the state because this is the bottom. This is a valley and ridge area where the overthrust overrose. So this is one of the largest geologic windows in the world. And these are faults again. Linville Falls fault is here. These are depicted. This is ground level now, but this is depicted what these faults did and what they generated. Millions, hundreds of millions of years ago. And then there's the continental crust again with that same depiction. There's Asheville, there's Black Mountain, Brevard Fault here, Kings Mountain Belt, but all of these are faults that have been generated over years. And this is the Blue Ridge province going from the Ash to Little Falls formation. Most of the rocks in Spruce Pine are Ash to Little Falls. And then the Coe, Shady, and Chilhowie. This is over in Tennessee and Grandfather Mountain. Grandfather Mountain was a thrust block that was formed and pushed up about 800 million years ago. And these are all the terrains in North Carolina and major faults. And of course, we're sitting about right there in Spruce Pine. Mitchell County is here. So you can see it's a big fault area. This is a rift basin forming as divergent continental margins pull away, these blocks drop, and that drop is a rift zone. These are major earthquake areas of the east and of the west. The red zones are more major here, and you can see we're fairly close to this one. These are earthquakes again along the east coast, with a big emphasis on South Carolina here and eastern Tennessee here. And there again, you can see a little clearer. And the size of these dots is the size of the earthquake. But there are lots of them. Oh, let me go back. This is the Virginia earthquake here. Now, it was an older earthquake in Virginia. And again, these are larger earthquakes along the Tennessee-North Carolina border. Again, the map, most of this occurs right along in here and some along here, along these old fault zones. And then here you see those orange dots are 4.1 to 6 Richter scale. So every once we get a while, we get a little bigger one. The one in Sparta would have been right here. That would become an orange dot. And then again, these are the faults that we talked about earlier in the grandfather mountain window, spruce pine here, Bakersfield here. And this is the Linville Falls fault. This is actually where Weissman's View is. How many have been to Weissman's View? You haven't, it's a place to go, put in your bucket list. But you're looking out this way into the Linville Gorge, and these are rocks. There's Table Rock. Table Rock used to be part of the Chilhowee, which was over here. It was pushed over there and then eroded in between. So Table Rock's a block of Chilhowee rocks that was moved there, was pushed there by the Linville Falls Pond. This over here is the Shady Dolomite. This is where Baxter is, and this is where the limestones are down in the valley with all of this, the 1.2 billion year old rocks moving up and over. And of course, there's Table Rock. This is the Linville Falls Fault. If you go to Linville Falls and go to the overlook, there's a major fault running right across here. This is the Upper Falls. This is the Lower Falls. All of these rocks are different from all of these rocks because these rocks have been moved there. This is the Linville Falls Fault right here. This is around behind the little opening. This used to be a new display that we worked with Tina White and her crew on. But these rocks are 1.2 billion years old. These rocks are 500 million years old. And this is the clay where it ground. That's called fault gap. So there's a major fault evidence that you can touch right here where we live. So this is the overthrust belt that rolled up and over this. And that happened about 400 million years ago, the fault itself. And there's the fault gouge. This is all like clay. You can take a knife and just punch it in here. This is clay from here to here. It's about 2 feet thick where these things ground together and ground each other in the sand. And that is depicted in the North Carolina Museum of Minerals at the top of the mountain. This is where you're walking through the Linville Falls Fault. But most people walk through this back to these exhibits and don't read anything and don't realize they're walking through the Linville Falls Fault. Did you do that, Dave? Okay, good. And again, the most major fault in our area, the Brevard Fault. It's named after the town of Brevard because that's where it was first really studied. And then again, this is the East Tennessee seismic zone. This is the Central Virginia seismic zone and the Charleston seismic zone. But these areas are a little more active. And then again, there's the impact of these areas and their scale. There was a Charleston earthquake early, late 1800s, killed a lot of people.
1886, my grandfather was there.
Wow. Yeah, that was a major, it destroyed a lot of things. And this is your Macaulay intensity. This is your Richter scale. And just to read some of this, this is a 7.0. Some of you hear of a 7.0. You know what a 7.0 can do? Some well-built wooden structures destroyed. Most masonry and frame structures destroyed with foundations. Rails bent, railroad rails bent. Few, if any, masonry structures remain standing. Few, if any. Bridges destroyed. Rails bent greatly. Total damage lines of sight and level are distorted. Objects thrown into the air. That's a 7. The 5.8 that occurred in Virginia, felt by all, some heavy furniture moved, a few instances of fallen plaster, damage slight. And a very strong one, damage negligible in buildings of good design and construction. Slight to moderate in well-built ordinary structures. Considerable damage in poorly built or badly designed structures. And most of what we get are in this range, not felt except by very few under especially favorable conditions. So that's what we normally mostly get there. And this was the 5.1 magnitude in Sparta. That's where it was.
What was the date of that?
It was It was on August the 9th, 2020 at 8:07. It was, and we felt it. We felt our house shake. A truck was coming up the driveway. Some of you felt this is where it cracked roads in Sparta. This is where it knocked a rock chimney down. Masonry structures are really susceptible to shaking. And when I say shaking, most earthquakes are waves. And they're more of a roll than anything. It's not like this. It's more of this is what the ground's doing. It's being distorted like this as the wave goes through. So it's almost like a rolling event. But you can imagine that being under a poor foundation. And in this case, and then some ground failures. This is in Sparta. And some grocery store damage. Can you imagine being in the grocery store where that shakes and all this stuff falling around you? The ceiling. And of course, this is the area of people feeling this quake. 8:07 a.m. And that's of course, that's Table Rock. I took that picture from the Blue Ridge Parkway, but this part of Table Rock is just sitting on top of other rocks. It was shoved and moved over there, and then it eroded here, leaving that pedestal on top. But lots of activity in North Carolina where we live. I wouldn't go out and buy earthquake insurance. The chances of getting damage are very, very, very slim. Of course, you did have that episode in Virginia that did cause damage, but many millions of people felt it but didn't get damage. But people ask me all the time, should I get earthquake insurance here? I wouldn't. Any questions?
Yes. How deep is it where the plates meet in the Atlantic Ocean?
It's different. It varies in depth. And if you ever watch a National Geographic episode of the lava coming out and forming pillow lavas, where it comes out, fuses, and it forms pillows as it freezes, as it solidifies. And there are zones like that. Most of those are deep, 1,000 feet. But like in Iceland, it's surfaced and splits that country. In fact, Iceland's growing. If you think about it, here's what's happening in Iceland. It's being split, and it's a divergent continental margin, so it's slowly doing this. And lots of activity. You read about some of the volcanoes there recently.
A few years ago.
Yes. Questions, Art, did you, Bill?
I did. We have a good view of Table Rock from our porch. And beyond that is Hawksbill. Was Hawksbill created at the same time?
Yes. Except Hawksbill is part of the Grandfather Mountain Rocks. It's not Hill Highway. It's a different type of quartzite. If you looked at it, you couldn't tell the difference, but it's different. But the same mechanism moved Hawksbill into Table Rock. Anything else?
What about all the volcanoes that we're hearing about across the world? Seems like more reporting, there's more volcanoes being reported.
And
Is that just anecdotal or just?
It's just the fact that they built up enough pressure and they're exploding. We've been pretty calm, but normally the Earth always has this activity. This activity never stops.
Right.
It never slows down, never stops. Those heat generators are all going. It's just, it takes time for that silica to melt. And it's the silica that's really sticky, that sticks together. It's like stopping a cork in a champagne bottle. Those are the ones that blow up. The ones that kill away at it, fume and fuse and erupt all the time, aren't very explosive. It's the ones like Yellowstone that will be catastrophic devastation.
Mhm.
Tell us about tsunamis. The one at Charleston,
In a tsunami, this is what happens in the tsunami. If you get a big fault, this is in the ocean. Think of ground, the ocean floor, thousands of feet deep, and you get an earthquake, like a reverse fault where this drops down. all of that water, the whole ocean drops in seconds. So once it drops, and it may drop 30 feet, all of that water comes back in, and there's your tsunami generation.
So do we have much risk of that on the East Coast?
Not too much. It's mainly in major seismic zones like California, but it's when one of these drops, that's when all of that water pours in a matter of seconds. And that's what generates that energy of those waves. Yes, George?
I've always wondered, how did you get so interested in geology?
Yeah.
I was between my sophomore and junior year, and I went to work for a coal company, and I got to help the geologist every once in a while. This guy got to ride around in four-wheel drive trucks, brand new. Got to go in the woods and measure and drill for coal, and I'd see the coal coming up, saying, "That's the neatest thing I ever saw." And then we'd go, when it rained, we'd go in the office and color maps. We'd color. So we'd make our maps when it rained, and then it would draw a picture of where the coal zones were, and we would design the mine for the direction of where the coal would be extracted. And they always hit the coal where we said it would be. And I thought, that's pretty neat. I'm gonna take a geology course, and that was it. I've been doing it for 44 years.
You make it more understandable than anybody I've ever.
Good thing.
So what is the program?
I made it.
Oh, you did? What is the information?
I get the information off the internet and some literature that I
Oh,
have.
you did a good job.
Well, thank you, Joe.
Is there a time that you actually, you feel the earthquake? Is there like a duration, a period, or just?
Well, this one that we felt, I got up in the morning and was in the living room, and I felt the house shake, and the grandfather clock started the chiming. You know, the dingers were hitting together. And then I looked out, and the horse trough water was doing this. We've had an earthquake. It lasted just a few seconds. Most of them last a few seconds, but when you get a big one, aftershocks. The big one comes in and loosens everything, and then the aftershocks make it fall. And if you saw masonry, remember our story, the three little pigs. One built the house out of straw and wood, and the brick house survived. Brick house is in danger in an earthquake. Is the most vulnerable.
On two occasions, I felt tremors in Columbia, South Carolina. One when I was living in Still Oaks, which was a home built out of brick in 1906. And the other one was somewhere else, but I could feel the tremor, but we were vacationing in San Francisco, and there was an earthquake. And we went to 14th floor of this hotel, and we woke up, the bed was, and we
It's scary because you aren't expecting.
we opened the door there, people looking down the hallway like,
And you're wondering, what was that? What was that?
Yeah.
What was it?
It did damage to, just like the foodstuffs and the throat, the same like we experienced.
Okay, guys, thank you.
One last question. The New Madrid Falls, that's over west of us. And is that active?
That's a failed rift, a major failed rift, and of course, nobody knows. And of course, some of you've heard about the New Madrid fault. The Mississippi River ran backwards because of that. It ran backwards for a little while, did a lot of damage. That fault could reoccur, nobody knows. If I lived in that area, I would have earthquake.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, the foothill or the boot hill of Missouri, yeah, right there. All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I know you need to leave, so if you need to go ahead and start packing up.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'll start getting this stuff.
Have you got the card? We could do that while you're.
Yeah.
Bill Robert.
Marvin needs to draw from last week. His name was his last week.
Yeah, Marvin, you get the.
And then we'll.
So while we're
7 of diamonds.
7 of diamonds.
Now, this week. The last 3 numbers are 032.
I gave it to the right person.
Look at that. I think that, how many were in there?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I do like to trust you. I've seen Bob with Bob. I didn't know that was.
Yes.
Ah. Or
Ah, okay. All that work didn't help, did it?
no.
Got one of those cards. All right, folks, well, since this is our first time back, I'm interested, you know, if you have any thoughts today on how this went or any suggestions for changes. Keep doing it? Yeah, I think I agree with that. The timing is okay, doing the 12:15, start Zoom at that time. Now, unless we have more attendees via Zoom, we may stop trying to have that. Because it looks like most of our attendees are here. Yeah, he was out of town, so he took the opportunity for that, but I think if we just start handling people out of town, we might not try and deal with that. We'll reach out to the rest of the members. Yes, sir?
I was gonna say, you do have people that are, you know, looking at the recording, so you gotta be careful not to exclude them.
Yeah. And it's something that we didn't have prior to COVID, was that for them when they weren't able to attend, but it might be something that we want to continue with them.
Well, I mean, as long as they're not feeling safe,
Yeah, yeah.
at some point, like, you gotta cut it.
All right, anything else before we leave? Mr. Marvin, you want to lead us in the 408 test then?
Sure. Before we test it, the things we think, say, and do. First, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? All right.
Oh, I get to do the ballot.
Yay.